Okay, hi everyone. We're really excited today to talk a little bit about Cado's newly released AI Investigator feature. So with me today, I have Chris Doman. Hi, Chris.
Hello.
Cado's co-founder and CTO. And I also have Paul Stamp. Hi, Paul.
Hey, how's it going?
Cado's head of product. Okay, so yeah, let's dive in. Let's talk about this new feature. So what it is, how it's helping security teams, and then we can of course finish up with a quick demo. So to kick things off, Chris, I'd love if you could tell us a little bit about the feature at a high level, like what is Cado AI Investigator?
Sure. So at Cado, we've always kind of automated some parts of investigations, so responding to incidents, by doing some smart stuff, some smart kind of data science, and grouping together what the key events are, working out what happens. But now we're bringing in some large language models to then generate a more kind of textual description of what's happened. So to save some people time in terms of actually understanding what it is, you have multiple ways of interpreting the investigation.
Yeah. And further streamlining that investigation. So in terms of the capability, the feature itself, I understand that there are two main core capabilities within the feature set. So can you talk us through both of those?
Sure. So for one thing, we summarize the investigation and then give you kind of like a mini report of what's happened. So because we already know all these things, we chain together potentially millions of events into a core set of things that happened. We just give you a really nice kind of pre-written report of what happened, so you can kind of reuse that. Obviously, edit it a bit first too, but give you a really quick kind of high-level idea of what's going on. And the second one is more file-specific. So large language models are actually pretty good at analyzing things like scripts, text files, telling you what's happening in there. So as well as giving the full contents of any script, which you've always done, we also give you a quick summary of what's going on. So maybe it's PowerShell downloading malicious file, or cron tab being used to maintain access to a system. And we'll give you a high level of what's going on there as well.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks so much. Paul, shifting over to you. So obviously DFIR generally requires a very unique or specialized skill set. And it can be obviously really difficult for organizations to come by this sort of talent. So how does this feature, Cado AI Investigator, help?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. Digital forensics and incident response, or DFIR, as it's abbreviated to, it's long since been the sole domain of a highly skilled forensic analyst. And the problem with that is that a full-time DFIR analyst is really beyond the means of most organizations outside of the very security mature, which means that they rely heavily on either expensive external help at a very high hourly rate, and any of the folks that they do have in-house really risk burnout due to overwork, because there's always more investigations that they need to perform than they have the capacity to do. So what AI Investigator, I think, helps is analysts of all levels and even more senior non-technical stakeholders to really understand what's happening in incident, or at least get a high-level understanding very quickly and very easily.
Great, thanks, Paul. I can't wait to see the demo. But before we do that, really quickly, a security question. So we've all heard a lot of security concerns around AI. So Chris, can you talk a little bit about how that was taken into consideration when we were building this feature?
Sure. I mean, so we were actually one of the first kind of security products to integrate some LLM features early on, but we used that as an alpha to get kind of customer feedback. And one of the concerns, understandably, given this forensics data, full files, etc., is that customers don't want to have that data being sent out to APIs, those kind of things. So this is actually an entirely local language model. So no data leaves your environment. At Cado, by default, we deploy into customers' environments anyway. So we as a company have none of that data. So none of this data is being sent out of your environment, which is fantastic. And then there's also the wider, I guess, concern, and considering some of the LinkedIn and Twitter comments that we might get from this video, is that what we're not suggesting here is you go and take this automated general report and then go and ship this off to court or something like that. So do verify any automated findings. These are great hints and kind of first steps too. We're putting a bunch of safety stuff to make sure that these things are quite conservative in terms of what we analyze. But we're also not saying this is, a full replacement for something, particularly if you can be sending it to court.
Yeah, good point. Okay, so Paul, if you're ready, let's get into a quick demo.
Sure.
Yeah.
So hopefully you can see my screen right now. Is that right, Jordan?
Almost, yes.
Okay, great.
Perfect.
So here's a particular incident. What actually happened here was a guard duty alert fired off, and we went out and acquired a number of pieces of evidence, a number of systems. And the first thing that you'll see is kind of down in the bottom left-hand corner, an AI-generated description of the story of what we think is going on. So we can see some of the techniques that they're using. You know, we can see here that we think that actually, there's an exit node with EC2, a Tor exit node that we're talking to. You can see Bitcoin related stuff. So it's giving you a story of what we think is going on. It's really confirming really what the alert had told us. But then if we wanted to delve in a little bit deeper, so we can see here we've got a number of events that are associated with resource hijacking, which is kind of MITRE speak for crypto mining in a lot of ways. So if we jump into that, then we can see the specific events that Cado's identified as being probably associated with crypto mining activity, and we can see, the timestamp. We can see why we think it's bad. Plus, we can see the details and which file this is associated with. But then, if we jump into this particular file here, that we say, hey, there's a number of reasons why we think there's something wrong with this. We can jump into that file, get some of the overall metadata about that file, about what it is and where it was created. We can jump in and say, take a look at what does Virus Total or the Open Threat Exchange know about it. Here's the specific indicators that we find in there. But here's the really clever stuff. What we're able to do then is take a look at the file and create an AI-generated summary of what we think is in here, so that we can think that it's written in Bash. There's setting environment variables. There's commenting outlines likely to disable competing processes or services. There's file removal. There's base64 encoded strings, possibly containing URLs. There's file attribute changes. So you can see here that there's something pretty bad going on. And then we actually have the full content of the file itself. So, even without necessarily being a massive Bash expert, you can get a pretty good idea from this first top half of this page as to why we think something in there is bad. And we think that's pretty cool.
Thanks, Paul. It's very cool. Thanks so much. So one last question, and I'll give it to anyone that wants to answer. So we're obviously using generative AI here, but in your guys' opinion, what are some other AI techniques that are going to be important here and can kind of up-level DFIR?
Yeah. So if I jump in there, sorry about that, Chris. Didn't give you the opportunity, but generative AI is really good at telling a story. It's really good at synthesizing information and telling a story based upon that, what it's finding. I think there's definitely a lot more scope outside of generative AI techniques, particularly around identifying those things that might be bad in the first place, and grouping together, either looking at the file and working out whether it's bad, or looking at sets of events and occurrences and working out, what we think comes together to constitute a set of malicious activity. Anything else on that, Chris, would you say?
Yeah, that's exactly it. We test out a bunch of stuff using large language models, and they are absolutely terrible at some things and not the right approach. So I think key here is to kind of test out, see what works, and use it for those things. But all the interesting stuff you can do, which has nothing to do with generative AI, around chaining together those events. So something bad happens, you see a user logged on just beforehand, so you have kind of temporal locality. All these kind of things are definitely kind of data science approaches that are really, really important and have nothing to do with large language models, but can be chained together to produce something pretty impressive.
Thank you. Thank you so much, both. Really appreciate it. Anyone else looking to learn a little bit more about the feature? We also recently wrote a blog, so I'll link that, but for everyone to check out. Thanks so much again, Paul, Chris. Talk to everyone soon.